welcome. This is Crime in Court. My name is Heather, and we are now on part 7 of the Franks Memorandum. This is the motion filed by Richard Allen, who is the suspect in the case, the Delphi case. His attorneys filed this Franks. They filed a motion for a Franks hearing, is what it's called, and that's why this is called the Franks Memorandum. So. We are now on part 7. We've read through 90 pages so far, and we've still got a little bit to go, but we're getting there. So we've gotten into the whole aspect of Elvis Fields, Bradley Holder, their connection, the whole connection as to, there were multiple people it showed a bunch of different people who all had some kind of connection towards one another. So Patrick Westfall is connected to this guy, is connected to that guy. That's how they all met. And, so there we go. We went over that last time. So this is just a continuance of how Elvis Fields, who is potentially connected to the crime scene. And we're going to go... I'm going to flip over to the Franks Memorandum. And of course I didn't have it up. I had it up before, but not now. Hold on 1 second as I get there. I was looking for this photo, I think. Yes. Okay. Sorry. So this is a side-by-side of all the sketches and Richard Allen, who is incarcerated right now, has been since October 2022. So for over a year now, he's been in prison, and we're still finding out information about this whole Odin thing, and we're still working on who the judge is going to be, and she just denied today, she denied her motion to disqualify that came from Allen's attorney, so she denied that flat out without a hearing. So we have no idea why or what her reasoning was behind that. And so she denied that. But back to this time, we're talking about, we're going to be talking about Elvis Fields. And I wanted to make sure that we had a picture of him. This is we don't know that this is of him, but this is the sketch, the police sketch from the woman who said that she saw someone on the bridge that day. Remember, not on the bridge, but near the mailboxes by her home, near the bridge where it like dips off. And she said nobody comes by. So we read that portion, and she provided the sketch description to the police. And that it's apparently, I don't know what Elvis Fields looks like, but apparently it looks like him. So that's suspicious. All right, we're going to continue on with the Elvis Fields connections to the crime scene. So the defense has previously discussed and presented the side-by-side photos that demonstrate that Elvis was mimicking Brad Holder by taking the time to recreate Holder's Facebook posts. Elvis would then post the recreated Facebook posts. What else did Forensi, Click, and Murphy unearth in their investigation that would connect Elvis to the crime scene? The Odin report provides much of the connective tissue. Quote, I'm now part of a gang and have a brother. On page 1 of the Odin report, Mary Jacobs told law enforcement that on February 14th, 2017, Elvis was rambling, hyper, and borderline incoherent. He was talking about having a brother, even though Elvis had no male siblings and was now part of a gang. Elvis told Mary that he had been on a bridge with 2 girls that were unalived. Elvis told her that someone named Abigail was a pain in the ass and a troublemaker. She and Elvis tried to give her, Mary Jacobs, a blue jacket. She said Elvis tried to give Mary a blue jacket. Sorry, I didn't understand that sentence for a second, so it threw me off. she told him that she had her own jacket, so she didn't take the jacket. So what happened to this blue jacket? Whose blue jacket was it? After Elvis made these statements to his sister Mary Jacobs, she later became aware of the Delphi Un-Alivings and put two and two together. Sometime 2 to 3 weeks after Elvis made the statement, Mary Jacobs and her husband Troy drove to Delphi. While in Delphi, Mary Jacobs talked to law enforcement about the things Elvis had told her on February 14th, 2017. So that was the day they were found. So they went missing the 13th and they were found the 14th and that of that year. So that is the exact day. But due to the mass amount of tips that were generated, her information may have been overlooked. And that was from some unredacted intake sheet from the Delphi double homicide written at the top of the page. It was a memorandum marked Exhibit 90, so that's where they got that. The defense has requested that the prosecutor locate the tip sheet that contains accurate details as to exactly when Mary Jacobs and her husband visited law enforcement officials in Delphi and what was communicated during this visit. Unfortunately, this is yet another piece of the evidence the defense has not yet received. They have not received a lot of things. Another thing that Elvis said was, quote, "If my spit is found on the girls, but I can explain it away, would I still be in trouble?" End quote. In December 2018, Mary Jacobs enlisted the help of an old acquaintance of hers named Misty Moore. Since law enforcement had not followed up with Mary Jacobs from earlier in the year when she drove to Delphi and described what Elvis had told her, Mary was still concerned that Elvis was involved in the Un-Alivings, but nothing was being done about it. You know, I mean, that's... For someone to suspect that their own brother... I mean, no one would ever think that their own brother would be capable of something like that. But if you are actually suspicious of your brother, I think that really is saying something. Especially, I mean, the things he said are very concerning. Don't get me wrong, but I think a lot of family members would just like brush it away, like, oh, I don't know what he was talking about or whatever. Like they'll put some excuse in their mind to excuse it away, whatever it is, because they don't want to think that their loved one is capable of something like that. But in reality, we do put blinders on for our loved ones, and that is sometimes what happens. So if she is saying that it was Elvis or that she suspects Elvis, then I would think that should be something to look at. Anyways, Misty Moore worked for Homeland Security out of Greenfield, and Mary was hoping Misty could assist in locating someone from law enforcement to become to become interested in Elvis Fields. Mary talked to Misty Moore, who then passed this information on to the proper law enforcement channels. Do we have another footnote? The unredacted copy of investigative thread. So it details the circumstances surrounding how Misty Moore became involved. In January 2018, Mary was interviewed. On February 1st, 2018, state police gave Mary Jacobs a polygraph to determine whether Mary was being truthful about what Elvis had told her almost a year earlier. Mary passed the polygraph. More on that later. Based upon what Mary Jacobs had told law enforcement in January 2018, and based upon Mary Jacobs passing a polygraph in February 2018, law enforcement interviewed Elvis on February 27th, 2018. This interview was videotaped, but the defense team just received the video on September 8th, 2024. That's a problem, that it took that long. Jerry Holman from Unified Command conducted this interview of Elvis. Kevin Murphy was also present. During the interview, Elvis agreed to take a mouth swab that would be used for DNA. Jerry Holman and Kevin Murphy, both with the state police, explained the purpose of the mouth swabs with Elvis. So Elvis was aware that the DNA from his mouth swab would be compared to any DNA found at the crime scene. At the conclusion of the interview, Trooper Murphy dropped Elvis off at his trailer. As described on page 1 of the Odin report, after Elvis exited the police vehicle and walked towards the trailer, Elvis turned around before entering his house and walked back to Trooper Kevin Murphy's vehicle. When Elvis came near the squad car, Elvis posed the question to Murphy, what would happen if his spit was found on one of the girls, but he had an explanation? Would he still be in trouble? Remember, Elvis is what they're considering to be mentally infirm. So he might not have the mental capacity to understand the implications of what he just said to a law enforcement officer, number one. And number two, he doesn't understand the weight of the case. I mean, the weight of what he just said. He doesn't understand how what he just said could be used against him, and that it is quite troubling to say something like that to an officer who is investigating a crime. You would think, most people would know that it would be something suspicious to say to a police officer, but he didn't have the mental capacity to understand, not even to ask that question. So upon hearing that troubling but incriminating comment, Trooper Murphy immediately called Unified Command and communicated with Detective Jay Harper. Now remember, Unified Command is made up of all the big wigs in the different law enforcement units, including Holman and Liggett, the sheriff. So everyone who needs to be informed is at the head of that Unified Command. But the problem is the information is filtering to that Unified Command and then it's not coming back out. They're hiding certain aspects of this investigation, in my opinion. That's my opinion. All right, so on August 22nd, 2018, Elvis's other sister, Joyce Moffett, was interviewed by law enforcement officers Kevin Murphy and Greg Ferenczi. And remember, Greg Ferenczi, I mentioned in a previous episode, he actually, his life was ended in kind of a suspicious way. Somebody ended him outside of his building with some kind of explosive, and then they shot him down when he came out. And I did put a link to a story in my last video. I can do that again for this video if you're curious about his unaliving as well. It's kind of strange that one of the guys from the investigating the Odin angle ends up losing his life in a strange way. All right, so on 2 previous occasions, Joyce had denied that Elvis had made incriminating statements to her. However, in this third interview, Joyce reluctantly recounted to Ferenczi and Murphy statements that Elvis made to her in the fall of 2017, according to Joyce Moffett. So this is his other sister. He has the 2 sisters. Sometime in the fall of 2017, Elvis Fields moved in with her, Joyce Moffett, following the death of her boyfriend. That's sad. So Joyce recounted the following statements that Elvis made to her in the kitchen in October 2017 at a time when they were living together under the same roof. Elvis said, "I am in a lot of trouble. I am going away for a long time. I was on the trail and that bridge with those girls when they ended up unalived. There were 2 other people there with me when it happened. I spit on one of the girls after they were ended." Emphasis added on that. I spit on one of the girls. So now that's 2 people he's told that he spit on one of the girls. What do you guys think about that? I think it's a truthful statement. I think I think that's a form of guilt, but I don't know if he necessarily, like, he might have been persuaded to be there. He might not have known what was going to happen when it happened. In my opinion, he could have just been persuaded to be doing Brad Holder's bidding and ended up, wishing that he hadn't been there that night. I don't know. I'm not going to fault him for that, but I'm just going to, that I'm not going to fault him for his actions. I'm going to give him a benefit of the doubt. And maybe he didn't know what was happening that night, but this is guilt, knowledge that he feels guilty about it. So he told his sisters, both of his sisters, on separate occasions. So not only did Elvis make the incriminating statement about going away for a long time and being on the trail where the girls were ended, but Elvis also confirmed to Joyce that he had indeed spit on one of the girls. Although Elvis reassured Murphy that he, Elvis, would be able to explain the spit, it is unknown at this point if Elvis has provided that explanation. Another thing Elvis said, he lied to police claiming he did not know Johnny Messer, even though Johnny Messer said that he only knew Elvis, but that Elvis was interested in joining Messer's and Brad Holder's Vindaloo crew. Oh, and I missed a bunch of these. Regarding the spit. Unfortunately, the spit comment made by Elvis to Murphy was not recorded, but Elvis did admit at a later interview that he somewhat remembered this comment concerning the spit. In his June 2018 interview, Elvis unequivocally denied knowing the recruiter Johnny Messer. And that is from Elvis's June 2018 interview, approximately at the 1520 mark. I don't know how to say that. Attached at Exhibit 92. This denial is important as it is evidence that Elvis knew that a connection between Johnny Messer and him would connect him to Brad Holder. So he didn't want to admit that he knew Messer because that would admit that he knew Holder. All right, so where were we? However, in his October 2018 interview, Johnny Messer tells a different story. In that October 23rd, 2018 interview, Johnny Messer states that Elvis lived with his with Johnny's Uncle Billy Messer. Why would he lie about that? Okay, so that probably came from a depot or something. All this information can be found in Johnny Messer's October interview beginning at whatever time this videotaped interview had been copied into a flash drive and marked exhibit 39 or 93. So whatever, he lied about Elvis living with his uncle for some reason. Johnny Messer further stated in that interview that he, Johnny, would take firewood to his uncle's home during the winter that Elvis was living with Billy Messer. Most importantly, Johnny mentions that Elvis's boss, and self-described father figure Ned Smith, and Elvis's roommate Rod Abrams all were interested in joining Johnny Messer's Vindaloo club. Remember, Brad Holder was also affiliated with that quote-unquote club. However, Johnny Messer claims that the Vindaloos would not be interested in the likes of Elvis, Rod, and Ned. So Johnny says they wouldn't want those kinds of people. And, but he does say that he was living with his uncle, which is weird. I don't know why he would lie about that. All right. So the importance of Elvis lying to police about knowing Johnny Messer cannot be understated. Elvis had to know that if he was connected to Johnny Messer, then he would eventually be connected to Brad Holder. It should again be noted that it is interesting that Ned Smith pursued an attorney for Elvis. That came in some supplemental discovery or something. Attorney Jill Gonzalez contacted Trooper Jay Harper and informed Harper that Elvis would not be taking a polygraph pursuant to her advice. Trooper Harper told the attorney that if Elvis refused to take the polygraph, that Elvis could not be excluded as a witness and would always possibly be under consideration as a person of interest. Then, in spite of his claims that Elvis would continue to be a person of interest, Harper ended the report by indicating that no further at this time will be conducted regarding Elvis Fields. In other words, Harper was talking out of both sides of his mouth, telling the attorneys that Elvis would continue to be a suspect, but then closing the book on Elvis by stating that there was nothing further to do at this time. That's interesting. All right, so however, Johnny Messers claims that the Vindaloo, okay, he didn't want them. The importance of Elvis lying to the police was knowing Johnny Messer would connect him. And it should again be noted that it is interesting that Ned Smith pursued an attorney for Elvis and that Ned Smith wanted to sit in on Elvis's October 2018 interview with police. So was Ned Smith kind of like the one that was it's a self-described father figure to Elvis and a boss. Was he part of this gang too, this Vindaloo Club, and maybe he was kind of taking Elvis under his wing so that he wanted to be there during the police interview? I don't know. In doing so, Ned was able to learn what type of questions were being asked of Elvis and provided Ned the ability to end the interview if Elvis started saying anything incriminating regarding Elvis, Ned, or Rod. So this person who wanted to sit next to Elvis at the interview and had previously paid for an attorney for Elvis is the name Ned Smith that, according to Johnny Messer, wanted to join Brad Holder's Vindaloo crew. All right, so Elvis's purported alibi. Rod Abrams lied about where he and Elvis were on February 13th, 2017, and Rod Abrams' false alibi conflicted with the alibi that Elvis provided to police. So at the June 20, 2018 interview, Elvis Fields told Ferenczi and Murphy that he, Elvis, remembered being at home in Rushville 492 days earlier on February 13th, 2017. It is quite a remarkable feat for someone with Elvis's mental capacity to remember a specific day 492 days earlier. Some people, like actress Mary Lou Henner, are blessed with something called autobiographical memory, there we go, which allows that person to remember specific days in their lives even years and years later. I did not know that that was a thing or that Mary Lou Henner had that, so that's interesting. I learned that in a court filing today. As previously noted by Murphy in this opinion, Elvis Fields had the mentality of a 7 or 8-year-old. Still, rather than admit that he, Elvis, had no idea where he was on the 13th, Elvis claimed he specifically remembers not leaving Rushville on that day. And that's coming from depositions, the Odin report, also his interview. He told police that he had proof of witness that he didn't leave Rushville. So he says somebody was with him or knew where his whereabouts all day. All right, so the Rod Abrams report. The Rod Abrams report. On August 29th, 2018, Ferenczi and Murphy interviewed Rod Abrams. When asked where he and Elvis were on the 13th, Rod Abrams said that he, Elvis, and Ned Smith were in Muncie on that day, Indiana, visiting a sick friend at the hospital. That's according to the Odin report. Autobiographical memory must be in the water in Rushville, as Rod Abrams, when interviewed, was able to remember exactly where he was 562 days earlier. In addition to remembering that they were at the hospital in Muncie, Rod also stated that both he and Elvis had their phones with them. When told that law enforcement would check cell phone records to see if Rod was actually at the hospital in Muncie, Rod explained that hospitals cut cell reception on phones because they interfere with hospital equipment. Wasn't that convenient, Rod? So their phones probably would not show that they were at the hospital. Baloney. I get cell phone in the hospitals. Granted, it might not be the best, but I still get cell phone in the hospitals. I go to hospitals for treatment for my autoimmune disease and other things. So the defense has not received any phone records yet, but are relying on page 1 of the Odin report for this information about the going to Muncie Hospital. In Supplement 542, Joyce Moffat interview provided in Discovery handwritten notes, presumably of law enforcement, that state the following. Fields, Ned Smith, Rod Abrams, not in Muncie on 2/13/2017 at hospital. This was the conclusion of law enforcement, and obviously Rod Abrams' ridiculous statement that their phone records would not confirm that their phones were at the hospital because of hospital equipment is common evidence that Rod Abrams was lying as well. It does seem that way. Like, oh yeah, I was here, but you can't check because they do something to the phones. So you can't determine if I was really there. The phone problem. On February 13th, 2017, phone records apparently show that Elvis's phone stayed in the same place in Rushville from approximately 10:30 a.m. until approximately 7:30 p.m. Phone records also show that Elvis, for some reason, did not use his phone whatsoever for roughly 9 hours. Elvis told law enforcement that he usually kept his phone on him. So isn't that interesting? The defense has not received any phone records yet, but are relying on the Odin report for this information. All right, so as stated in the previous paragraph, Rod Abrams stated that Elvis had taken his phone to Muncie to visit the mystery friend in the hospital. However, phone records show that Elvis's phone was in Rushville during that time frame, so he was not in Muncie. At least not his phone was. His phone wasn't there, and it would just be odd that you don't bring it with you to the hospital, and yeah, I don't know, or that you don't use it for 9 whole hours if you are home. So the phone problem is twofold. Elvis's phone remaining at his home for roughly 9 straight hours conflicts with Rod Abrams' professed alibi for Elvis, Ned, and Rod Abrams. And 2, in today's day and age, it would seem highly unlikely that Elvis simply did not pick up his phone for roughly 9 hours, especially when Elvis claimed that he usually kept his phone on him. The takeaway for any curious investigator would also be a minimum twofold. 1, Rod Abrams lied about being in Muncie, but Elvis forgot to stick with the lie. 2, Elvis went up to Delphi, but was told to leave his phone behind so that the phone data would not show, which I think is the answer, and so that it wouldn't show that he was in Delphi. And it is unknown if Rod Abrams or Ned Smith's phone records were ever even recovered. Suffice it to say, Elvis's and Rod Abrams' alibis are beyond highly suspicious. Elvis described forming horns out of sticks and placing them on Abby's head, and crime scene photos confirm Elvis's statement. So let's trigger warning. I'm going to go back and show the girls the runes and how they were laid out. So this was how the girls were found, based on what we read from this motion. And the sticks on top of them are laid out. You can see that Abby had horns placed on her out of sticks. So Elvis described forming horns out of sticks and placing them on Abby's head. Perhaps the most damaging piece of evidence that links Elvis to the crime scene was found in an unusual place, the middle of a report that memorialized the results of Mary Jacobs' polygraph examination. In Mary's pre-examination interview, polygraph examiner Stephanie Thompson recorded that Mary Jacobs stated the following: Elvis told her that Abigail is a little troublemaker and that he placed leaves on her and used sticks to give her horns. And that came from polygraphs. Alrighty. So horns and antlers are common symbols used in pagan rituals, and Brad Holder himself displayed the Odinite fascination with horns on his Facebook page. Find attached Exhibit 97 from Brad Holder's Facebook page. As you can see, the middle photograph is an image of a person with small stick-like antlers on the top of their head. Find attached a close-up photograph of Abby's head from the crime scene from a distance. We don't have these, but they're explaining what the exhibits are for the court to review. From a distance, it may not be immediately noticeable. However, upon closer inspection, it is obvious that someone involved in the Un-Alivings intentionally placed small sticks from a tree on top of Abby's hair to resemble horns or antlers. The horns formed from sticks on Abby's head looked similar to the image found on Holder's Facebook page. So they gave you a side-by-side comparison in the exhibits. But we won't see it because it has the crime scene. All right, the defense has not viewed one single report that discusses the sticks placed atop Abby's hair, shaped like horns, antlers, and being compared with Elvis's statement to his sister that he shaped sticks into horns on Abby. Therefore, the presumption is that Unified Command never figured this out. Trooper Purdy was present at the polygraph examination but was not able to watch the examination and therefore would not know about Elvis's words to his sister using sticks to form horns on Abby. Rather than now being curious in the year 2023 as to how Elvis knew such a thing and then using this information as a basis to secure a search warrant or even an arrest warrant on Elvis when factoring in all the other evidence, sadly, it is expected that law enforcement will do the exact opposite of being curious. It is expected that law enforcement will claim that the photograph does not prove anything or that the defense is exaggerating the paragraph. Perhaps Unified Command will huddle together and establish the go-to party line stance on how to deal with the problems that they've created with the polygraph examination information and photos of sticks formed as horns on Abby's head in the crime scene photographs. It would be refreshing if someone in Unified Command would stop worrying about how the public will view their incompetence, admit to their mistakes, and then perform the type of police work that should have been performed 6 years ago. That, I think the defense is throwing down the gauntlet. Those are some fighting words. Unified Command, stop worrying about what the public thinks, about how incompetent you are. Just admit to your mistakes and start doing the work correctly, like you're supposed to, like you should have done. Where was I? The defense is not holding its breath. As the defense told Holman in his deposition, the unfortunate expectation is that Holman and Liggett will try to figure out how to solve that problem rather than solve the case of who unalived those girls. Elvis's insider knowledge of the crime scene may be a place for Holman to start. Again, part of the Franks analysis involves the court reviewing the behavior of law enforcement to determine whether Liggett intentionally concealed and falsified evidence in Liggett's affidavit for search warrant. Liggett and Holman and the rest of Unified Command's reaction to the information contained in the polygraph examination concerning sticks formed and into horns on Abby's head may very well reveal whether Liggett is interested in the truth or in burying the truth, which again is part of the Franks analysis, which we never got a hearing for because she flat out denied it before she denied the motion to disqualify, which now she's denied that, so she'll go and deny everything else again, because that's what she'll do. And hopefully Rick Allen's attorneys have some means of stopping her from doing that. All right, so Patrick Westfall's connection to the crime scene. Much of what connects Patrick Westfall to the crime scene has been discussed in the section detailing what connected Brad Holder to the crime scene. To shorten this section, the defense will numerically lay out both the evidence previously discussed as well as a few other pieces of evidence that tie Westfall to the crime scene. And the footnote says, if the fact or piece of evidence has been discussed in the previous section, the defense is not going to drop a footnote to that reference, as currently the defense has 126 footnotes and believes the court may appreciate not duplicating footnotes. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. So number 1. Brad Holder and Patrick Westfall were friends at least until late January 21, 2017, as proven by Facebook photos previously attached. So they've proven they were Facebook friends. However, number 2, according to Amber Holder, who's Brad Holder's wife or ex-wife, I don't know if they're separated. According to Amber Holder and law enforcement monitoring Facebook posts between Holder and Westfall, a fight between Brad and Westfall, Brad and Patrick, occurred sometime in February 2017 concerning a ritual gone bad in the woods near a creek. So that's pretty specific. They have a falling out after something happened in the month of February of the same year that Abby and Libby went missing and then were found unalived. And their fight was something about a ritual that went bad in the woods. So did he not perform the ritual correctly? Like what? I don't know what they're mad about. I'd like to know like what the falling out was. Anyways, in the Odin report, number 3, Brad Holder told Amber Holder that the person that unalived the girls was Patrick Westfall and his crew. Number 4, furthermore, as referenced in the Odin report, Brad Holder told Amber Holder that Patrick Westfall is dangerous and has powerful friends that will protect him, and that she, Amber Holder, needs to back off or Brad Holder will not be able to protect her. So Brad told his wife, stop asking questions or I'm not going to be able to protect you against these dangerous people. Is what I take from that. Number 5, Brad Holder told law enforcement that Patrick Westfall has PTSD. Number 6, the video or the ritual in Fort Wayne that Forensi sent to Liggett and which has been attached as an exhibit shows Brad Holder videotaping someone that looks like Patrick Westfall using his fingers to mark a tree in a ceremony at about the same height that the F tree was marked with Libby's red liquid DNA. Leaving the question of whether Patrick Westfall marked the F tree the same way that he marked the tree in the Fort Wayne ceremony video. Number 7, Patrick Westfall lives within a 7-minute drive of where the girls were unalived. Number 8, Johnny Messer and Brad Holder commonly hung out at the Monon High Bridge and in the woods around the Monon High Bridge. These are all coming from videotaped interview with the defense. Okay. Monon High Bridge. All right, so number 9. Patrick Westfall also admitted that he knew the woods around the Monon Trail very well. 10. A Patrick Westfall Facebook post from just 2 months before the girls were unalived shows Westfall cutting tree limbs into runes by slicing the tree limb with an electric saw, creating clean, smooth edges to the tree limb, similar to possibly the ones that they found. One of the tree limbs looked like it had been freshly cut. So there's like using a power tool, not like a broken branch. So in 11, in that Facebook post, Brad Holder is commenting, cutting runes with a bunch of exclamation points. 12, at the crime scene, one of the tree limbs placed on Abby has its end sliced cleanly and smoothly, similarly to the way that Patrick Westfall is slicing the limbs on Exhibit 98, the video. Westfall's alibi for February 13th is that on the day of the abduction, Patrick Westfall, was at home with his son Nick. 14. There is no evidence that law enforcement knocked on doors to determine if Patrick Westfall was at home at that time, nor any evidence that law enforcement walked around the neighborhood to see if any Ring door cameras or any type of cameras caught Patrick Westfall leaving the house. Law enforcement just believed Patrick Westfall. 15. Patrick Westfall was a pastor for a religion known as Asatru, which is a warrior type of religion with many gods, including Odin and Thor. So we've talked about this. It's a type of Odinist belief or a type of religion, I guess. So he was a pastor for this Asatru group. 16. Patrick Westfall and Brad Holder were both affiliated with Vinlanders clubs or gang, along with Johnny Messer. On March 12th, 2017, March 2nd, 2017, only 16 days after the girls were found unalived, Unified Command member Kevin Hammond indicated that there was no lead required concerning Patrick Westfall, meaning no further need to investigate him. So, and that's less than a month after, just a couple weeks after the investigation, they've already ruled him out. Like, you don't usually rule people out. You always kind of keep them on your suspect list unless you have your guy. Like, you never really rule anybody out unless they have like specific alibi or whatever, and you have proof of it. So Patrick Westfall is connected to the crime scene in multiple ways. It is unknown if Patrick Holder threw Patrick Westfall under the bus to Amber Holder in order to take the stink off of himself, or if Brad Holder knows that Westfall unalived those girls and then marked the tree. So is it Brad Holder really did it and he's trying to make it seem like somebody else did, trying to put the blame on somebody because, maybe he like planted those thoughts, trying to manipulate his wife or whatever, I think she's wife, into thinking that it was somebody else that did it. But then why did they have a falling out? I don't know. It's very interesting to me. So either way, it cannot be understated that one single solitary softball interview between law enforcement and Patrick Westfall is disgraceful, considering that everything listed above that links Westfall to the crimes. Why are they not like... Let's repeat that again. It appears that Westfall was interviewed one time on February 19th, 2017. 2 weeks later, Westfall was eliminated as a suspect. The defense is unaware of any search warrants requested on Patrick Westfall to determine whether this Asatru pastor had taken clothes of Abby or Libby as ceremonial keepsakes, or even if he had saved any of Abby's DNA. By looking at the 5-paragraph report generated from the only interview of Patrick Westphal, it looks like law enforcement did nothing but lob giant softballs at Patrick Westphal, meaning like really easy questions that he would pass an interview like flying colors. So rather than conduct an intense interrogation the way citizens would expect for someone that the evidence shows is so closely connected to the crimes. They've got this information in multiple places, various points, in Johnny Messer's videotape statement. So they got a lot of information from different areas. Unfortunately, the defense did not have time to call the exact timestamps for those references. Yada, yada, yada. All right. So Johnny Messer's connection to the crime scene and the crime. As has previously been discussed, Johnny Messer was close with Brad Holder and Patrick Westphal and also knew Elvis Fields, Ned Smith, and Rod Abrams. Furthermore, as previously discussed, Johnny Messer was a recruiter for Vinlander. Also, as previously stated, Ned Smith, Rod Abrams, and Elvis Fields all hoped to join the Vinlander Club, according to Johnny Messer. Around Valentine's Day 2017, Johnny Messer went up there to Delphi, because remember, is he in Rushville? I think he's in Rushville with Elvis. So he went up to Delphi to hang out with his Vinlander buddies. As stated earlier, Patrick Westphal claimed to be at home in Delphi on the 13th, and Brad Holder claimed to be in Logansport on February 13th. Therefore, if Johnny Messer was going up there to visit his Vinlander buddies, Johnny Messer, was going to Delphi to spend time with Westphal, who was like Messer's brother, or possibly to Logansport to visit Holder. When Messer came back from being in Delphi around Valentine's Day, the vehicle he drove to Delphi had DNA along the side of the vehicle, and Messer, had no explanation for the existence of that DNA. Taylor Hornaday had to go to the car wash multiple times to clean off the vehicle. That's in the Odin report. Evidence shows that the recruiter, Johnny Messer, was the connective tissue between the Delphi crew and the Rushville crew. Unified Command overlooked these connections, and furthermore, Liggett failed to inform Judge Diener of these connections to the case. So you failed to give all of this exculpatory evidence over to the judge when you tried to get a search warrant for my client, and you did it illegally, and here's why. So, especially when he lied, it seems he intentionally left this stuff out. Unified Command had every bit of knowledge about the Odin angle, about all of these individuals, and they chose to quiet the story. They chose to ignore each of those lines of questioning, and then they nipped it in the bud. They said, nothing to see here, no more. I wonder if Ferenczi kept looking after he was told nothing to see here. That's just my wild speculation, but who knows? We don't know about Ferenczi. All right, so evidence shows that the recruiter, Johnny Messer, was the connective tissue. Unified Command overlooked these connections and submitted search warrants, got search warrants approved with information that was missing in your whole investigation there. So Rod Abrams' connection to the crime scene. So now I like how I really like how this is written too, because it's very organized it's so much for your brain to process. Having Odinists in your small towns of USA, but it's a lot to process. So I like how the defense team broke it down and gave us here's how this person's involved. Here's what this person did or said, and kind of laid it all out that way. Because otherwise, this could be a really confusing, messy piece. But they did it really, I think they wrote it well. So Rod Abrams' connection to the crime scene. Rod Abrams told police a lie about his whereabouts on February 13th, 2017. This was discussed and referenced in Elvis's section, as was the fact that Elvis's alibi conflicted with Rod Abrams' alibi. So one said they were in the hospital, the other one said they were home, but they were together. So what was it? So here are a few other evidentiary nuggets picked up from the defense review of Rod Abrams' February 27th, 2018 interview, so a year and some change after the crimes, that the prosecution just provided to the defense. So they just got this information in this data dump on September 8th. That's when the state, sorry, I'm moving my cords here, they keep getting bumped. That's when the state handed over a bunch of data to Alan's attorneys, and now they have to, trial was supposed to be in January. They were supposed to figure out in just a few short months what all this evidence is and how to figure out what they need for their trial, for their case or strategy rather, and if they need to hire expert witnesses and hire things to refute things and whatnot, there's just not enough time. If you're giving data, or any lawyers in the chat, please tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that never mind. Sorry, I don't know. Lost my train of thought. All right, so the ADHD brain trying to be 10 steps ahead. If I remember what I was saying, I'll come back to it. So here's what... the defense didn't have... That's what I was going to say. To lawyers in the chat, I think that there might be... or that there isn't like a time limitation of when discovery is discoverable. Like, is there a deadline? Like, you must give this within 60 days of trial, or 180 days of trial. Like, what's the threshold? Is there one even? I don't even know if there is. So if anybody knows in the chat, let me know. Some of these evidentiary nuggets from Rod Abrams' videotaped interview incriminate Elvis Fields. So one, Elvis had been working with Ned Smith since 2005, but then stopped working for Ned in 2017, the same year as the Un-Alivings. According to Rod Abrams, Elvis was communicating with a 12-year-old girl on the internet and discussing inappropriate things. Okay. Elvis used Facebook to communicate to young girls aged 13, 14, and 15, found at whatever mark, 1345 mark on Rod Abrams' second video. When law enforcement asked Rod, has he, Elvis, ever talked about doing anything to a couple of girls, there was a long pause. Then Rod Abrams finally said, no. The law enforcement officer then said, are you sure? Rod responded, he's never, he has, The law enforcement officer then says, you kind of hesitated when I asked you that. When Rod Abrams is asked if Ned Smith and Elvis will also say that they were all in Muncie on February 13th, Rod Abrams doesn't answer the question, but after a long pause, tells a long, rambling story about how Ned doesn't always remember things. Interesting. Finally, law enforcement asks Rod if they can look at Rod's phone to see if any texts between Rod and Elvis. Rod, refuses, claiming that Elvis no longer has his phone number after Rod changed his phones. So they don't even talk anymore, apparently. According to Johnny Messer, Rod Abrams, along with Elvis and Ned Smith, were all interested in joining Messer's Ann Holder's Vinlander Club. Yes, that's just saying they had very little time to review. So the lies about Elvis's alibi should have been especially alarming to Unified Command. They should have been glaring. You should have known that they were lying, and you should have seen within their questioning that they were suspicious. But anyways, however, the items enumerated above all should cause Unified Command to pause about Rod Abrams and Elvis Field's involvement in the murders or in the Un-Alivings. And we're going to stop there because we are about an hour in, and that's a good portion to stop because we move on to the next section, which is the conclusion of part 2. And we are now on page 104. So we're getting there. I promise we're getting there. So let me know, please, in the comments below what you think about this case, what you think about this filing. Whoa, sorry. All right. What do you think about this filing? What do you think about the Odinist angle and Elvis, and the fact that his description matches the description that the one lady gave for the sketch, the drawings? I don't know who Elvis Fields is, and I've never looked any of these people up to try to, like, I don't want to dox them or anything like that. I don't really care. I'm just reading the court filings. That's all I care about. But apparently, interestingly, in these court documents, everybody agrees that Elvis Fields looks like this guy that was sketched in April of 2019. So 2 years after the Un-Alivings. And we only got a sketch in July of 2017. So it even took a few months for that. So how good are people's recollection? They're not. But even so, none of them look like Richard Allen. So how do we justify that Richard Allen is the guy when we've got all this other evidence that is exculpatory for Richard Allen and leaning towards guilt towards some other people? So it's interesting. It's a very interesting case. And these attorneys, Baldwin and Rosie, really have us thinking and have tried to open our eyes to some things, I think. So anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you for the next one. Take care. Bye. Thanks for watching.